Hey everybody, welcome to No Plan, No Problem, the weekly D&D podcast where two Dungeon Masters go on an epic adventure to look for actionable tips for you to use in your next game. I'm your Dungeon Master, Anto.
And I am World Star Matthew Perkins.
You can find my stuff across the internet at icarus-games.co.uk.
And you can find all of my stuff over at matthewperkins.net. Anto, what are we going to chat about today?
Today, we're going to be talking about fighters, the quintessential martial class for D&D, one of the OG classes. And we're going to dive into what makes them tick, what makes them interesting, and what kind of questions people have about them. So who's the adventurer asking our first question today?
Now, this is such a tricky question because they have so many vowels in their name, but I'm going to have a crack. I'm going to have a crack at this name. So this user is from D&D Beyond, and their name is Naivara Ariana. I sound like I'm casting a spell.
I mean, that's pretty good.
Ariana. Yeah. But they asked a very simple question. Hey, Anto, are fighters boring?
Oh, that is a good question. No? Yes.
Yeah,
No.
What? Ooh.
Yeah, it depends. I think that there is potential there for you to play a fighter as boring.
Yeah.
I think that you definitely have greater scope as a fighter to be boring if you're not kind of using some of your abilities in interesting ways, because most of what you're going to be doing is hitting stuff. And a lot of that can be boring, especially when you get to higher levels. So yes and no. What do you think?
Well, look, I think yes and no, but in the sense that everybody can be boring. But as a class, I don't think they're necessarily more boring.
No.
You know, they get options, right? Yeah. And when I think about is something boring or not, I try and count how many options do I have and how many ways do I have that I can affect the battlefield. Man, some fighting classes, some fighting subclasses have a lot of options for messing with the flow of battle.
Yeah.
When you think of a fighter, what are you thinking? Like, how many of the subclasses can you think of?
There's Battlemaster, Cavalier, Samurai, Eldritch Knight, Gunslinger. Is Gunslinger a fighter subclass?
The Gunslinger.
The Gunslinger.
I love the Gunslinger.
Arcane Archer, and I'm starting to run out. So I can think of like 6.
That's enough, right? And I reckon there's a few of those that have a bit of crossover flavor-wise. Like the Arcane Archer is mainly an archer, right? And there's like the one that's the champion, and he just kind of hits
the champion.
Harder. Yeah. And the Cavalier could maybe be a little bit boring, except you get to ride a mount, which is kind of fun. But all the other ones, I think, get really cool options, like especially the Eldritch Knight, you know, which gets that real kind of like, they get the blade that they summon to themselves.
Yeah.
Ooh, you know, I've always wanted to have a boss battle where it's 2 Eldritch Knight brothers or something, and they share a sword between them. And it, like,
that would be cool.
That would be a cool boss fight. But I really think of the Battlemaster when I think of an interesting fighter.
I think that for most people I've ever spoken to about fighters, Battlemaster is kind of the fighter that they want to play because it gets some of the best stuff.
Yeah. Because they get those superiority dice, and that's kind of like their thing that increments up and gets more powerful as they get higher levels. And they get to choose a roster of abilities, which are these kind of combat theatrics.
Yeah.
What's kind of fun is that a lot of the things that Battlemasters, that's what they're called, right? Battlemasters?
Yeah.
A lot of the things they get to do the things that every player asks to do.
Yes.
Like we're in a fight and the player goes, can I blind them? Oh, I want to disarm him. I want to trip him. Dude, you are not a Battlemaster. That is his job. He's doing the sweeping kick, sweep the leg, disarm, punch the eyes, whatever they do. I don't know how to fight.
I think that is the thing I like the most about the Battlemaster, but also the thing that bothers me the most, because so much of what comes from the Battlemaster and their kind of maneuvers, I really do think that just everyone should be able to attempt as part of the rules.
Yeah, but I suppose even if you did let everyone attempt it, the Battlemaster would be the only one that's doing it with their superiority dice, right? They're definitely getting like a D6, D8,
yeah. Like
D10
I like
advantage on it.
the superiority dice for making them better at doing it, but things like fainting, I do think that all fighters should be able to feint because it is the kind of thing that a martial character is going to be doing.
Yeah, like there's goats.
Yeah, just like that, just like the fainting goats. But then giving the Battlemaster the ability to add their superiority dice for those things could keep them feeling distinct and just be like they are the pinnacle of the fighter.
Yeah.
Versus everyone being able to do it.
But when we think of the Battlemaster, we both go, look, there's no way that's boring, right? I can imagine if someone does think that fighters are boring, they're probably not thinking of the Battlemaster. They're probably thinking of the fact that the fighter is the only class, when they get to the tippy top of those ridiculous levels, they get 5 attacks. Like, fighters get the most, I'm going to attack, bang, 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 bang. Like, they are a full clip of ammunition, bang, 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 bang.
They are...
and if you just attack, of course they're going to be boring.
Yeah.
Maybe people aren't using the abilities.
I think that it's probably a combination of people aren't necessarily using the abilities, and some players aren't kind of leveraging like the narrative of attacks, and they're just being like, I attack, I roll my dice, I've done this much damage, instead of leaning into how you attack, what are you doing that's interesting. Are you using maneuvers or using your abilities in combination with your attacks? Are you doing the interesting thing, or are you just standing still and rolling 5 dice?
Yeah. Because like the cool thing about the Battlemaster are those combat theatrics, right? Like doing theatrical things. But you can even take your basic attacks and make them theatrical just in the way that you describe them.
Oh, yeah.
And the feel of them changes when you go... usually you kind of have to wait until you know the result of the attack so that you can accurately describe the way that you've interacted with the world. Because if you go, I'm going to chop off his head, and then you miss or you don't kill him, then you know, what were you doing? But if you go, oh, I hit him for a crit and I killed him, at that point you can go, I'm going to chop off his head and it's going to arc backwards and hit this other guy in the back of the head and get his attention.
I think that for that, the tip might be kind of a two-barreled one, kind of one for Dungeon Masters, one for players. For players, you should be thinking of more interesting ways to narrate your attacks. So when you make your attack roll, kind of describe where on the body you're targeting, what you hope the outcome will be. And then for the Dungeon Masters, you use that description provided by the player to inform how you describe the effect. So if someone says, I'm going to aim for the head, and they miss, describe the enemy ducking under the blade and then reacting to it. Or if they hit, describe the specific impact of that hit. And that will make the players feel like they're doing more interesting things than just rolling the dice.
How'd you get so wise? Oh, wow.
Headband of wisdom.
Headband. I've got the stupid hat of dumb. Hey, I think it's time for a brand new segment called, it's very familiar, but it's rebranded as Let's Roll for Friendship.
Roll for Friendship.
Roll for Friendship.
So, if you are enjoying this podcast and you want to help support us, the best thing that you can do is engage with us, be our friends. So if you are watching here on YouTube, drop a comment down below, let us know what you think about what we've talked about. If we've missed anything, let us know down in the comments. Make sure to like and engage and do all that stuff that feeds the mighty algorithm. And then if you're listening on podcast platforms, those juicy 5-star reviews really help push the podcast out to more people and keep the, the lights on, even more so than anything else, but not as much as our lovely patrons. So if you really want to support us and enjoy what we do here, head over to our Patreon, which will be linked in all the places where links are on whatever platform you are on. And you can get a whole bunch of exclusive stuff like pre-shows, extra mechanically stuff when we do stats towns, and all that good stuff.
It's really important that you help keep the lights on as well, because look behind me. Oh, my lights are turning blue.
It's got so many expensive lights.
They're so blue now. They used to be normal. We really want to be mates with you guys. So we've also got a link somewhere for a Discord. We have a Discord where we chat about the episode.
We do.
It gets a little bit hectic there sometimes, but we're pretty active on there. So if you want to chat directly to us, hey, leave a comment on the YouTube video or stop by the Discord and we'll chat about stuff. It's really chill. It's really fun.
Yeah.
And we can do this because we rolled really high on our roll for friendship.
Yeah. What are we talking about next, dear Matthew?
Well, here's the thing. It's going to surprise you, but in my notes, it says that you're meant to know what we're doing now.
Let me consult my notes. Yes, I do know what we're doing. We're going to do Steph to Steal, which is one of my favourite segments where we go and we look at other popular culture, other media, and we find ways that we can steal stuff from it and shove it into our D&D game. And what I want to steal from today is fighting games. I want to look at fighting games and see how we can take some elements of that and put it into our games with our fighters and make them more interesting.
Yeah. And not like a particular fighting game.
No, just...
so we're robbing the genre.
Yeah. The wider genre. What are the staples of fighting games that would make the fighter class more interesting?
The two fighters. The two fighters. Sorry, okay, this is a joke that... Okay, I hope you've seen that interview with Dave Grohl where he talks about Christopher Walken saying Foo Fighters. So the two fighters that I think of are Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter.
Yeah.
I don't think there are any. There's Tekken, but who likes Tekken?
Yeah, there's Tekken. There are lots of fighting games, but most of them have similar things. And I think...
Mono a mono?
Mono a mono. For me, there's two kind of big things that I think of in a fighting game that I would like to translate into D&D. There's the combo, where you can combine attacks and build to bigger attacks. And then there's the finishing move. And I think the finishing move is the big one.
Oh, yeah, that's way better than I was going to suggest. I was like, you have to fight your way through a roster of more daring and like spiky-haired anime boys until you can...
Just the taller the hair, the higher the threat.
Yours is much more tenable for Dungeons and Dragons.
So if we start with combos, how could we incorporate combos into the fighter? Like, how could we get them in mechanically?
Well, okay, so a combo in a fighting game isn't necessarily... It can have kind of two different meanings the way I think about it. Like some of it's like the actual inputs, like roll forward, punch, and it does a special attack. But I don't think you mean that. I think you mean it's like when you keep uppercutting and then you keep doing like this kick and you can keep them juggling in the air because you're getting the timing so good with these abilities that just kind of mesh up together really well.
Yeah.
I would like to see not combos working internally based on just my abilities, interacting with just my abilities.
Yeah.
I want to see how my abilities interact with the other players' abilities.
Yes. That is exactly what I want.
So that, like, what if... so I'm a fighter, and maybe this is a fighter feature that you unlock combo abilities with different classes, with their signature classes. So I can say, okay, on my turn, I'm going to declare I want to do a combo on this person, right? And so you go, I declare combo. The next person that does a signature attack on that person, on that enemy, you two do a combo. And the combo is going to be different depending
on the class. That's really cool. Like, I like the idea. I think of kind of the Avengers where Thor is like bouncing lightning off Cap's shield, and that kind of stuff would be super cool. And having that be a signature either ability of the fighter or like a fighter feat would be really cool. Where you go, here's a list of different combo actions you can take. You hold your action until your combo mate performs theirs, and then you get to pile in with it. That would be super cool.
It almost feels like a subclass, you know?
Yeah, like that. Maybe that would be what the Battlemaster would be. You give all the Battlemaster's maneuvers to just all fighters, and then the Battlemaster becomes the combo. He is just the combo machine.
Yeah, that's so fun. Well, can we maybe, like, let's try and think of just one combo with a signature move with somebody else, just for funsies. Like, Which other class has the most signature move?
I think that if we took a wizard and then like infusing their spell into the weapon of the fighter. So
that's
charging, like if they were going to cast lightning bolting through the weapon of the fighter.
That's very cool. And I imagine it might even have like even a more lasting effect than just that single attack. Because that would kind of incentivize this fighter to go, no, I want to combo with the wizard, because then for the rest of the fight, my weapon will be doing lightning damage, not slashing damage, or something like that.
You could, if the wizard has got a spell that would normally trigger off a spell save DC, they can combo with the fighter, and it instead changes to a hit. So provided the fighter hits, then the fighter delivers that spell, which would mean you get to move around the spell save DCs of monsters. And if you've got a monster that you're like, oh, they've got a stupid high constitution, I'm never going to get this spell off. Well, I can combo with the fighter, and the fighter will stab them with my magic.
Yeah. Or even like, I like the idea of moving the spell save. Like, imagine the fighter gives them a kind of contest that they weren't necessarily predicting, right? And so even if it was a will save, it actually becomes a strength save because they're wrestling with the fighter at the same time. And maybe as the fighter, this subclass levels up, they can actually substitute, eventually, when they get like level 14, they can substitute in any saving throw that they want.
That'd be cool. Like, moving those dials would be really cool.
I think that this is a great idea. I love how that we started in Stuff to Steal and we ended in Stats Town. We need a tip, though. Like, so what are you feeling about this?
I think that the tip would be to incorporate combinations between fighters and other classes. So work on ways for them to like tag team enemies.
Yeah, that's pretty fun. I kind of want it on Patreon. Do something for this, you know? Like, I think I'm going to have a think about this when this episode comes out. I'm going to have something up there about these combos. I'm going to try and get like maybe an Eldritch Blast in there, maybe something for a wizard, and maybe something with each of the martial classes, because they would be flipping off each other and throwing each other. Like,
throw is definitely one that should be in there. Just geeting another like player around. Maybe the barbarian one. The barbarian throws the fighter into the fight.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Keep an eye out for that on Patreon. And the tip is just do combo attacks.
Yeah.
Cool.
Combo stuff is cool.
All right. So I have another person helping us with a tip here. And let me just crack it open. Find it. So the adventure helping us with this tip is unknown because they've deleted their account. I'm presuming that they were killed. I'm sorry.
That's the only reasonable assumption.
Yeah. F's in the chat. And they say, so the most powerful weapon is the Great Maul, right? Which is 2d6 damage. And they say that the Great Sword is the same. But the sword is 50 gold pieces and the maul is 10 gold pieces. So is this legit? Like, is this the most powerful weapon and it costs 10 gold pieces, 2d6 for a Great Maul? Is that the most powerful weapon, Anto, for a fighter?
I believe so. You're either going to have 2d6 or 1d12, and 2d6 is going to be better than 1d12. So yeah, the best option you're going to get as a fighter without magic is going to be dirt cheap.
Okay, so that's the answer then. So that's the end of the podcast, everybody, and thanks so much for No, but of course it's not. Yeah, the most powerful. What does power mean?
Well, I assume they mean in terms of the raw damage potential for the dice in a non-magical sense. So looking through it, I think that what they're getting to is it's really cheap to get the best mechanical advantage weapon that you can get as a fighter. That isn't very interesting to just start as the best you can get without magic. And
yeah, look, but the fighter doesn't get their power from the weapon, right?
No.
They get their power from like compounding the weapon with their abilities and their multi-attack, because they end up with getting 5 attacks.
Yeah.
And when you're rolling 5 attacks and you have one weapon that's going to do a d12 and another weapon that might do a d10, at that point, like, you're still going to do a lot of damage. It doesn't really matter.
I think that it does bring up kind of one of the potential issues with a fighter is that you get fighting styles. So you do kind of specialize in certain types of weaponry, but weapons in 5th edition aren't particularly interesting. There's only a really small pool of them. Most of them do the same kind of damage and nothing else, just the straight damage. And that might contribute to what makes some people feel like fighters are boring, because they're not throwing around crazy magics all the time. They have this weapon. They'll have the same weapon from the start to the end of the campaign unless they get a magic item, and it's always doing the same thing, and there's nothing interesting going on with it.
So I'm quietly firing up over here. I'm quietly getting angry. I'm like, they're doing weapons dirty. Like, I read this book as a kid. I don't remember what it's called, The Circle of Light or something like that. And it was like, it was written by some Australian, and I found out later when I looked this guy up, like this beloved childhood book, fantasy book that I read, found out that he was just a guy that managed a supermarket one town over. And found his book somehow. He was like, I read the blurb and it said, like, this guy, someone Middleton, runs this Coles supermarket. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. But in the back of his novel, he had like 10 pages, a glossary of just weapon names and then descriptions of them, because he had every character in the book using a different weapon. And he went exotic. He wasn't just going glaive, which is like, you know, a long, pointy a stick with a blade on the end. Yeah. He had like all kinds of different kinds of blades and Arabic weapons and Japanese weapons. There's so much out there. And at no point when I was reading the book was I thinking about this weapon is more powerful than that weapon. Yeah. I was just thinking, man, these weapons are rad. Yeah. And I think there's so much more to a martial weapon than just the dice that you roll. Yeah. Because
I think that
realistically, you can assign any dice to any weapon. Who cares? Like, it's just balance.
In the book, it does specify that the weapon names given are just broad categories, and that a longsword could be a katana or could be another kind of similar sized weapons, and it encourages players to kind of flavor the visual look of their weapons. Like, one thing I do really frequently, because my setting takes place in a desert, is if my players want to take like a scimitar instead of a short sword or something like that, then I have no problem with that. I let them do that because it makes sense for the world. But I do kind of miss that 3.5 Pathfinder. Every weapon is a little bit different and all of them do slightly different things. The minutiae of that did help things feel a little more different. It meant that when you found two weapons, they were a little bit different.
There are fancy weapons in there. I think like the real question here is the opposite of what this person's asking, because they're saying, why wouldn't I just take the most powerful weapons? And I think the real question is something pointing at, like, how can we make people take these niche weapons more often? Like the whip, the net.
The whip and the net are great. Like, the net in particular. Yeah, the whip and the net. The net in particular is one of my favorite weapons to throw against the party, because it's so... You can really disrupt the action economy with a net, and that really throws the players off. If you just charge at them with a group of mobs with nets and just net them all, you can really mess their day up.
Do you know how a net works off the top of your head? Because I don't remember exactly. Do you have like an inkling?
I believe it's a thrown weapon, you throw it on them, then they become restrained, and they can either use their action to pull the net off or cut through it.
Okay, well, that makes sense. Let's have a look. Okay. But, like, I'm thinking about this great mall, this 2d6 and this club and that kind of character. And, like, because there's also part of this question, there's the shame that you see, like, in an MMO, like a multiplayer online game, an RPG or something, a computer game, where everyone is just using the same weapon just because it's got the best stats, or we all look the same because we've got the, like, that's kind of sad as well. Like, I wonder how many adventuring parties are like sword and board, bow and arrow, big weapon, and those are the types of people you have. Yeah,
right? I think that kind of video game allegory is a really good one, because as it stands, unless you as the Dungeon Master or you as players choose to put that flavour in, a lot of the time you are all going to be rocking the same stuff, and you're going to be dressed, equipped with the same things. And yeah, you can reflavour it yourself and give them cosmetic changes, and the game encourages you to do that. But some more variety would be nice.
Look, this is going to sound like such a cop-out when I suggest this tip. Who cares how powerful your weapon is?
Yeah, I mean...
Like, who cares how much damage? I don't care if you're doing 2d6 or 1d10 or 1d8. The thing I'm doing a d4. Nobody take a dagger. Don't be crazy. You know, we're out here trying to win a fight. Don't bring a dagger to an anything fight.
A barbarian with a dagger.
Oh, actually, do you know what? You kind of sold me. That sounds fun.
It's Drax. Like, a barbarian with 2 daggers.
When you're ranking weapons as to how you esteem them and how much you value them as a player, don't even look at the damage that they do. I reckon, seriously, just think about how cool they look. Picture your dude or your dudette or your NB and just go, oh, do they have a net? Oh, do they have a whip?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe they come from the Whip and Net, the pub down the road.
I think, as well, just reflavor things. Like, if your idea is, I want to be carrying, like, a Buster Sword, but I don't want to use the Great Sword stats, use the Great Maul stats and carry a Buster Sword. Like, the stats don't have to be tied to the weapon. Just make what looks cool.
Yeah, that's a really good way as a DM as well to, like, homebrew stuff, where you go, well, these stats of this weapon are balanced because they're in the book, right?
Yeah.
They're endorsed by Wizards of the Coast. So, you know, yeah, you can have this, and I know it's balanced, and you can reflavor it as you want, so then you get kind of both happy mediums of it's balanced because it's from Wizards, and it's cool because the player just described how they got this massive Buster Sword off the side of, like, the cart that ran over their parents or something. It's made out of wood.
I mean, it's still a Buster Sword made out of wood would still mess you up.
It would, I tell you, it would bust you up. It'd bust you up. So wait, what is it? We said, like, 3 tips there. Which one do we want to say is the tip?
Make what looks cool.
Good. Done. Hey, we've done a very good podcast, I think. I'm so proud of us. I knew we could do it. Are you proud?
I am proud. I'm always proud of us.
Good. Can I please ask you to proudly, mind you, recap the tips?
Okay, so our 3 tips for Foo Fighters. Tip number 1 is to, as the players, make sure you are narrating your attacks more, and as the Dungeon Master, use those narrated attacks to inform how you narrate the result and the reaction. Our second tip is to incorporate inter-party combos between the fighter and the other classes, and we'll have something about that on Patreon. And then tip 3 is just make what looks cool, reflavor weapons and armors, reflavor their stats or just their visual appearance to what is coolest for your player.
Man, I love fighting. Have you ever played a fighter?
I have played a fighter. My very first character was a fighter.
I think a lot of people have their first character being a fighter because they come off as simple.
Yeah.
They're not simple.
Right.
They're fun.
I think that... Have you ever played the video game Chivalry? It's a sword fighting video game. So
I've seen it. It was fun.
Utter madness. And my first character was based on just one of them just swinging their sword like a madman. It was amazing.
I think they made a second one. I want to try it. Anyway, hey, we got to end this podcast. We got places to be. We got to turn off the lights because we're being charged for it. So, hey, thanks everyone for listening. My name is Matthew Perkins. You can find my stuff over at matthewperkins.net.
And I'm Anto, and you can find my stuff across the internet at icarus-games.co.uk.
And the song that plays us out every single week is called All Together by a band called House Hats. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to leave a comment down below, and we will see you all later. Bye-bye.
Bye.